All right, so you want to know how these U.S. tariffs could shake things up for international students
Yeah.
and foreign workers in Canada?
Right.
Well, you've come to the right place for that. We've got some research here
Hmm.
that's going to give you some real insider knowledge about this whole thing.
These tariffs, they could really reshape Canada's economic and immigration landscape
Yeah.
over the next few years.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, we're talking potential impacts on
Yeah.
pretty much everything from job markets to permanent residency.
Okay, so let's break this down. We're looking at a 25% tariff on Canadian imports starting February 1st, 2025.
Right.
What kind of shock waves are we expecting to see in the Canadian economy from that?
Well, these tariffs are going to hit Canadian businesses pretty hard,
Yeah.
especially those in manufacturing, agriculture, and the auto industry.
Mm.
We're likely to see increased costs for consumers, less demand for Canadian products, and
Right.
unfortunately, potential job losses in those sectors.
So it's not just about numbers on a spreadsheet. This is
Mhm.
going to have a real impact on people's lives.
Exactly.
Mm.
And those ripple effects are going to be felt by everyone,
Yeah.
including international students and foreign workers. I mean, think about it. Fewer jobs
Right.
means more competition
Yeah.
in an already tight job market.
That's got to be stressful, especially for someone who's already
But
dealing with the challenges of adapting to a new country.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why we're going to unpack some specific strategies for navigating this new reality.
Okay.
Let's start with students. What stands out to you in the research about how they can prepare?
Financial planning seems to be absolutely critical
Yeah.
with potential tuition hikes and rising living costs.
Mhm.
Students are going to need to be even more savvy about budgeting.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
And it's not just about managing expenses.
Yeah.
Students who rely on part-time work to make ends meet
Mm-hmm.
could be in a tough spot if those jobs become scarce.
So what can they do? Just cross their fingers and hope for the best?
Not at all. They need to be proactive. Seeking out work that aligns with their study permit is key. For example, if you're studying computer science, look for internships
Right.
or part-time gigs in the tech sector.
Makes sense. And universities can play a huge role in supporting students through this, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Universities have a wealth of resources, work-study programs, career services for networking,
Yeah.
even emergency financial aid.
Yeah.
They can also provide guidance on navigating potential changes to work permit rules
Right.
or scholarship programs.
So staying informed is going to be a big one, it seems.
Definitely. This is a dynamic situation, and students need to stay on top of any updates or changes
Yeah.
that could affect them.
Okay, so let's shift gears and talk about foreign workers.
Right.
What's the biggest piece of advice you'd give them in light of these tariffs?
Be hyper-aware of job market trends.
Mm-hmm.
Identify which industries are most vulnerable to the economic fallout
Okay.
from these tariffs. If you're in one of those sectors,
Mm-hmm.
it might be time to consider upskilling or reskilling to stay competitive.
So if you're a welder in the auto industry, maybe it's time to get some additional training in a field like renewable energy.
Exactly. The good news is that there are still pockets of opportunity out there.
Okay.
The healthcare and tech sectors, for example, are expected to remain relatively stable.
That's reassuring. So there's still hope, but workers need to be proactive and strategic.
Precisely. And speaking of being strategic, we need to talk about potential shifts
Okay.
in immigration policy itself.
Yeah.
Because these tariffs
Yeah.
could trigger some pretty significant changes in how Canada manages immigration.
Okay. Now you've got my attention. This is where things could get really interesting.
We might see Canada tightening up its temporary foreign worker programs,
Okay.
making it more difficult for employers to hire foreign workers.
So stricter requirements for those labor market impact assessments.
Exactly. And potentially even caps on the number of work permits issued in certain sectors.
So tougher to get in, even temporarily.
Hmm.
Got it. What about permanent residency? Any changes on that front?
It's possible that we could see Canada lower its permanent residency targets,
Mm-hmm.
making it more challenging to immigrate overall.
Mm.
Imagine you've been working towards settling in Canada permanently,
All right.
and suddenly the path gets narrower.
Yeah.
That's a lot to process.
That would be a huge deal for a lot of people. So we've got potential job losses, a more competitive job market,
Right.
and possibly tighter immigration restrictions. What does this all mean for international students specifically?
Well, for starters, those tuition hikes we mentioned,
Yeah.
they could become a reality as universities grapple with the economic fallout from the tariffs.
Right.
And there's been talk of potential changes to the post-graduation work permit program,
Okay.
which allows international students to gain Canadian work experience after graduation.
So making it harder for them to stay in Canada after they finish their studies.
That's one possibility.
Right.
We could see tighter eligibility requirements or even a reduction in the length of the work permit.
Gotcha.
And on top of that, there's been discussion of stricter regulations on spousal open work permits,
Okay.
which could impact families who rely on both partners being able to work.
Okay, so these changes could really reshape the landscape for international students in Canada.
Yeah,
They're going to need to stay informed and adapt to the new reality.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But it's not all doom and gloom.
Okay.
While general economic immigration might slow down,
Mm-hmm.
Canada could prioritize immigrants in essential sectors that are less affected by the tariffs.
So areas like healthcare, construction, and infrastructure might actually see an increase in immigration?
Potentially.
Yeah.
It's about adapting to the new economic landscape
Right.
and focusing on sectors that are critical to Canada's long-term growth.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings up a really interesting question.
Okay, hit me with it.
Could we see a reshuffling of Canada's immigration priorities
Okay.
with a greater emphasis on attracting talent in specific fields?
Okay.
And if so, what would that mean for the overall makeup of Canada's immigrant population?
Now, that's something to think about.
Mm.
And we'll definitely dig into that in more detail when we come back.
Yes, we'll explore how these regional variations might play out
Right.
and what they could mean for prospective immigrants.
Sounds good. We were just talking about how Canada might shift its immigration priorities, in light of these U.S. tariffs. It's like the country's being forced to take a hard look in the mirror and figure out where it needs to adapt.
It's true. These tariffs could act as a catalyst for some pretty significant policy innovations.
Okay.
I mean,
Right.
if Canada needs to attract talent in specific sectors to stay competitive, they're going to have to get creative.
I'm all for creative policy solutions. What kind of innovations are we talking about?
We could see streamlined visa processing for healthcare workers, for instance,
Okay.
or maybe special incentives to attract tech entrepreneurs.
Right.
It's all about finding ways to make Canada a more attractive destination for the talent it needs.
So this could actually create some new opportunities for
Yeah.
international students and foreign workers who are looking to come to Canada.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it also underscores the importance of being strategic and doing your research.
Mm.
If you're thinking about coming to Canada, look into those in-demand sectors.
Mm-hmm.
Hone your skills in those areas
Mhm.
and start building your network now.
Okay, so let's say I'm an international student listening to this right now.
Okay.
What's my biggest takeaway? What should I be doing today to prepare for this shift in landscape?
First of all, don't panic.
Okay.
Remember, knowledge is power. Understand the potential changes that are coming and how they might affect your specific situation.
Because a computer science student is going to have a different set of considerations than a nursing student, for example.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So do your research. Talk to your university's international student advisors.
Okay.
Connect with immigrant-serving organizations. Follow reputable news sources.
Right.
The more informed you are, the better equipped you'll be to make smart decisions.
Solid advice. And what about foreign workers who are already in Canada?
Yeah.
What's their game plan?
The same principles apply. Stay informed, be adaptable, and think long-term. If you're in a sector that's heavily reliant on U.S. trade, it might be time to explore other career options or invest in some additional training.
I imagine that can feel daunting, especially if you've already invested a lot of time and energy building a career in a certain field.
It's definitely not easy,
Yeah.
but it's better to be proactive than to get caught off guard.
Right.
And remember, there are resources available to help workers navigate these transitions.
Okay.
Government-funded training programs, professional development courses, mentorship programs. Tap into those support systems.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential economic downturn, the possible policy shifts,
Right.
the need for adaptability. It all feels a bit heavy, to be honest. Is there any good news here?
Yeah.
Anything to feel optimistic about?
Absolutely. Challenges often breed innovation.
Yeah.
This situation could push Canada to rethink its approach to immigration,
Okay.
making it more responsive to the needs of both the labor market and newcomers themselves.
So it's not just about weather in the storm. It's about using this as an opportunity to build a stronger, more resilient system.
Exactly. And for those who are willing to embrace change, to learn and adapt,
Yeah.
there will still be incredible opportunities to build a life and a career in Canada.
That's a really important point. It's not about closing doors.
Right.
It's about adapting to a new reality and finding creative solutions.
Now, while there's potential for positive change, we also need to consider the risks.
Okay.
These tariffs and the policy shifts they might trigger
Mm-hmm.
could have a real impact on Canada's global reputation.
That's a great point. Canada has built a strong brand around being welcome and inclusive.
Right.
Could these changes tarnish that image?
It's definitely a concern.
Mm-hmm.
If talented individuals around the world start to perceive Canada as less welcoming
Yeah.
or less stable, they might choose to go elsewhere.
We've seen that happen before in other countries.
Right.
It's called brain drain, and it can have a real impact on the country's economic growth and innovation.
Exactly. And it's
Yeah.
not just about attracting the best and brightest.
Right.
It's also about maintaining the social fabric of Canadian society, that sense of multiculturalism and diversity that Canada is known for.
So the government needs to be really mindful of the message it's sending to the world.
Absolutely. Transparency is key.
Mm-hmm.
They need to communicate clearly about the rationale behind any policy changes
Yeah.
and emphasize that it's not about closing doors, but about adapting to a new economic reality.
Honesty and open communication, that's always a good strategy.
And they also need to highlight the positives. Canada is still investing in immigration,
Mm-hmm.
albeit in a more targeted way,
Mm-hmm.
showcasing those opportunities in essential sectors,
Right.
promoting regional immigration pathways. It's all about reframing the narrative.
So instead of talking about less immigration, it's about talking about smart immigration
Exactly.
that's focused on long-term economic growth and social cohesion.
Precisely. It's about finding that balance between economic pragmatism and Canada's core values of openness and inclusion.
Okay, so we've talked about the potential downsides, the risks to Canada's global reputation.
Yeah.
But could there be any positive outcomes here? Any unexpected benefits
Yeah.
that might emerge from this situation?
It's definitely possible. This situation could force Canada to have some tough but necessary conversations about its immigration system.
So a moment of reflection, a chance to take stock and fine-tune things.
Exactly. We could see more streamlined application processes,
Mm-hmm.
better integration programs for newcomers,
Right.
a stronger focus on matching immigrants with the right jobs and communities.
So maybe this whole situation could be a catalyst for positive change,
Yeah.
a way to build an even stronger and more resilient immigration system.
That's the hope. It's about turning a challenge into an opportunity.
It's fascinating to think that these U.S. tariffs could spark a period of real reflection and innovation in Canada's immigration system.
Yeah, it's like a crucible moment, forcing Canada to kind of examine its strengths and weaknesses
Right.
and figure out how to adapt to a changing global landscape.
And this introspection could lead to some positive outcomes, right? We were just talking about the potential for more streamlined processes, better integration programs,
Yeah.
and a more strategic approach to matching immigrants with the right jobs and communities.
Exactly. It's about making sure the system is working effectively for everyone, for newcomers, for employers, and for Canadian society as a whole.
So it's not just about tweaking things around the edges, it's about potentially reimagining the whole system.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. This
Mm.
could be an opportunity to move beyond reactive policymaking and really think about what kind of immigration system Canada wants to have, in the long term.
That's exciting. So if we imagine a best case scenario, what might a more innovative and resilient immigration system look like in Canada?
Well, I think we could see a greater emphasis on skills-based immigration, attracting talent in those key sectors that are driving economic growth.
So less focus on where someone is from and more focus on what they can bring to the table.
Exactly. And we could see more streamlined pathways for permanent residency, making it easier for those who want to build a life in Canada to actually do so.
That would be huge for so many people who are currently navigating a very complex
Right.
and often frustrating system.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think we could also see a greater focus on pre-arrival integration support,
Okay.
helping newcomers get settled and connected to their communities before they even arrive in Canada.
So setting people up for success right from the start.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that successful integration is a two-way street. It's not just about newcomers adapting to Canadian society,
Right.
but also about Canadian society being welcoming and inclusive.
That's such an important point.
Yeah.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the biggest takeaway you'd like to leave our listener with?
I think it's this. While there's definitely uncertainty ahead,
Mm-hmm.
there's also a lot of potential for positive change. These U.S. tariffs could act as a catalyst for Canada to build an even stronger and more responsive immigration system.
And that system could benefit everyone, newcomers, employers, and Canadian society as a whole.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So stay informed, be adaptable, and don't be afraid to engage in the conversation about the future of immigration in Canada.
Great advice. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the complex world of U.S. tariffs and Canadian immigration. It's been an eye-opening conversation.
It certainly has. And remember, even amidst uncertainty, opportunities emerge. Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those questions coming.